Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be tackling something I know a lot of you have been wanting to hear more about, and that's the intertwined histories of Indigenous and African Americans here in the U.S.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We'll be taking excerpts from this book called Warriors and Ancestors, How Indigenous and African Americans Shaped America.
Great book.
Yeah, and really kind of uncovering a side of America's history that often gets overlooked.
For sure. For sure.
So get ready, because this is going to be one of those deep dives where we challenge some assumptions
Oh, yeah,
and
definitely.
hopefully spark some serious curiosity.
Yeah, get you thinking.
Right. So are you ready to kind of like rethink what you thought you knew about the past?
I am.
I know I am every time we do one of these.
Me too, me too. It never gets old.
So what I think is so fascinating about this book is that it really throws out the window this idea that like history fits neatly into these like separate boxes.
Yeah, it does.
And as we dig in, you're going to see that Indigenous and African American stories are so like woven together
They are so intertwined.
in ways that probably surprise you.
Yeah, and some people might already be familiar with some of these things, but
Yeah.
there's always something new to discover.
Absolutely. And I mean, right off the bat, this book dives into the possibility that Africans were exploring the Americas before Columbus.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I know, right? It really does make you question everything you thought you knew, right? I mean, we're all taught about 1492 being the starting point.
Yeah, 1492, that's it?
Yeah, the beginning of it all, supposedly, but Warriors and Ancestors, it kind of like digs into the evidence and suggests something else might have been going on.
Yeah, like way before?
Think about it. Ancient Africans, they were like expert sailors. They were making voyages across huge distances way back when.
Oh, yeah, they were sailing all over the place.
Yeah, and then you've got accounts of the Diamante voyages in the 14th century, potentially even reaching the Americas.
Wow.
It's wild. It's like a whole new way of looking at pre-Columbian history.
It really is. It's amazing. And even, okay, let's just say for a second, those voyages didn't happen or weren't like a consistent thing, you know?
Right.
But the book got me thinking about those massive indigenous trade networks that were already crisscrossing this entire continent way before any Europeans showed up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, like, what if knowledge, what if goods, maybe even people were traveling along those routes? It's not crazy to think that some kind of contact or exchange was already happening.
No, it's not. And, that's where it gets really interesting when you start looking at the cultural overlaps.
Right, because there are a lot of them.
There are, the book highlights all these agricultural practices that are super similar on both sides of the Atlantic. And then there are these linguistic connections that suggest some deeper link.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
It's pretty fascinating. And then you've even got shared rituals that kind of hint at maybe a common origin somewhere way back when.
It makes you wonder.
It really does. And when you start piecing together all these little clues, it challenges that traditional timeline we're all used to and opens up all these new possibilities.
Like a whole hidden history.
It really is.
But we've got to be real here. The story takes a really dark turn when the Europeans show up.
Yeah.
I mean, the transatlantic slave trade was just brutal.
It was devastating.
And it wasn't just devastating for the millions of Africans who were enslaved, but for indigenous populations as well.
Absolutely. The slave trade basically fueled this engine of colonial expansion, which brought with it violence and displacement and disease.
Yeah.
Indigenous communities were being pushed off their land. Their way of life was disrupted.
Yeah, their whole world was turned upside down.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking when you think about how Indigenous and African people suffered under the weight of European ambition.
It's really heavy stuff, but even in the face of all that horror, there were these acts of defiance, acts of solidarity that are actually really inspiring.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that's where the book brings up this idea of the Native Underground.
Yeah, it's a really powerful concept. The Native Underground was this network of native tribes who actively helped runaway slaves.
Wow.
You think about the Seminoles, for example. They offered refuge in their territory. They created this space where Skagit slaves could actually find safety and community.
That's amazing.
And it wasn't just the Seminoles. You see the rise of maroon communities all over the Americas where runaway slaves established these independent settlements, often with the help and protection of nearby indigenous tribes.
So they were working each other.
They were helping each other out.
And that's what's so powerful to me about these alliances. It's not just about survival. It was about resistance against a common enemy.
Yeah, they were fighting back.
It's almost like both groups recognized their shared experience of oppression, and they found strength in that unity.
Absolutely. And, when we look at examples like the Seminole Wars, we see that unity manifest in these incredible acts of bravery and strategic brilliance.
The Seminole Wars were something else.
They were Black Seminoles who were enslaved Africans who had joined the Seminole tribe. They fought alongside their indigenous brothers and sisters, resisting forced relocation.
It's incredible.
Can you imagine the power of that alliance?
It's amazing. And the Seminole Wars are a great example of how indigenous and African people weren't just fighting side by side, they were creating something new.
Yeah, they were blending their cultures.
A blended culture that was drawing strength from both traditions.
Yeah, a true fusion.
It's more than just a shared struggle. It's shared creation. It's shared innovation.
It's about building something better together.
Absolutely. And that's where I think this book really shines in revealing this rich cultural tapestry that emerged from these interactions.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about battles. It was about building these independent settlements, havens of freedom where these groups could thrive.
They were creating a new way of life.
Think about the ingenuity it took to create those communities, to blend agricultural practices, languages, ways of life, to forge a new identity.
Yeah, they were pioneers in a way.
They really were. And those blended communities, those families that were formed, really showcased the lasting legacy of this alliance, right? It wasn't just about short-term survival. It was about creating a new generation.
Right, a generation that carried both indigenous and African heritage.
Exactly. The book delves into this fascinating world of cultural exchange, and you see the roots of musical genres like blues and jazz, the evolution of language, the blending of spiritual practices.
It's amazing to see how much these cultures influenced each other.
And it's remarkable how modern science is now backing up these historical narratives.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, the book talks about DNA evidence that's confirming these ancestral connections, adding a whole new layer of complexity to how we understand race and identity.
Right, it's challenging the old categories.
You might be surprised to learn that mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down through the maternal line, is revealing just how intertwined these communities really are.
Yeah, it's rewriting our understanding of ancestry.
It's like science is catching up to what these communities have known all along. Their histories are interwoven, their destinies are linked.
Exactly, they're not separate stories.
Right. But the book doesn't shy away from the more complicated aspects of this history either.
No, it doesn't.
One of the things that really struck me was the fact that some Native American tribes, particularly the 5 civilized tribes, also participated in enslaving Africans.
Yeah, that's a difficult part of the story.
How do we reconcile that with this narrative of unity and shared struggle?
That's where understanding the historical context is so important. You have to remember that these tribes were under immense pressure from the U.S. government to assimilate, to adopt European practices.
Right.
And in some cases, that meant participating in the economic systems of the time, which tragically included slavery.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation, and it's crucial to remember that the type of slavery practiced by some native tribes often differed from the brutal chattel slavery of Europeans.
Right, there were important distinctions.
But it's still a difficult part of this history to grapple with, and it's something the book doesn't shy away from.
No, it acknowledges the pain and the complexity.
It reminds us that history is rarely black and white.
Yeah, it's full of contradictions and nuances.
And we need to understand those complexities if we're going to learn from the past and build a better future.
Absolutely.
And what's fascinating is that even within the context of the 5 civilized tribes participating in slavery, you still see examples of resistance and solidarity.
Yeah, you see those threats throughout.
Like the Trail of Tears, which was a horrific chapter for both Black and Native populations, really underscores that shared suffering.
It does. The Trail of Tears forced the relocation of thousands of Native Americans, including freedmen who had been living within those tribal communities.
Right.
And in the aftermath of that devastation, you see these freedmen fighting for their rights, for citizenship, for land, and for equality within those tribal nations.
They were determined to make a life for themselves.
They were. It's a testament to their resilience and determination to carve out a space for themselves, even in the face of such hardship.
Their story is just one example of how the fight for civil rights in the 19th and 20th centuries wasn't just an African-American struggle. It was a struggle shared by both Black and Native communities.
Absolutely. Think about it. Segregation, forced relocation, economic exploitation. These were all facets of the same systemic injustice that targeted both groups.
They were fighting the same fight.
They were. And what's fascinating is that when you look at the activism that emerged in both communities, you see so many parallels.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The book highlights figures like Martin Luther King Jr., a powerful voice for African-American civil rights, and Vine Deloria Jr., a leading advocate for Native American rights.
2 iconic figures.
Both men challenged the status quo, demanding justice and equality for their communities.
They were powerful voices for change.
And they weren't alone.
No, they were part of a larger movement.
Landmark legal cases like Brown v. Board of Education, which desegregated schools for African
A
Americans,
landmark decision.
and the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act, which affirmed tribal sovereignty and self-governance.
Both of those cases demonstrate this parallel fight for justice.
It's striking how they use similar tactics, protests, legal challenges, community organizing, to fight for their rights.
They were drawing from the same playbook, in a way.
It's a powerful reminder that the fight for civil rights wasn't just about individual groups. It was about dismantling a system of oppression that impacted multiple communities.
It was about systemic change.
And that fight continues today, building on the foundations laid by those who came before us.
Absolutely, we're still fighting for justice and equality.
But we've talked a lot about shared struggles and resistance. What about the spiritual side of this alliance? That's something that really captivated me and warriors and ancestors.
Oh yeah, the spiritual connections between these communities are truly remarkable.
They are. Both indigenous and African spiritual traditions share a deep reverence for ancestors, a profound connection to nature, and a belief in a spiritual world that intertwines with the physical.
It's a beautiful tapestry of beliefs and practices.
And when those traditions came together, something truly unique and powerful emerged.
A spiritual fusion.
I was fascinated by the book's discussion of practices like hoodoo and root work, which blend African traditions with native healing practices, using herbs, rituals, and spiritual knowledge for protection and healing.
Yeah, it's fascinating how those traditions blended and evolved.
It's like this secret language of resilience and survival passed down through generations.
Yeah, a hidden wisdom.
It's a testament to the human spirit's ability to find strength and solace even in the most challenging circumstances.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't just hoodoo, it was the sacred ceremonies often practiced in secret, passed down through families and communities that served as a source of strength and cultural preservation.
Those ceremonies were a way to keep their traditions alive.
It's incredible how these traditions survived, even thrived, despite attempts to suppress them.
It speaks to the enduring power of culture and spirituality.
And we can't forget about the contributions of Black and Indigenous soldiers who fought for this country often despite facing discrimination and prejudice within the very ranks they served.
Yeah, their stories are often overlooked.
From the American Revolution to the World Wars, their stories are a vital part of American history.
They served with honor and courage.
Think about the Buffalo Soldiers, those legendary African-American regiments who served in the Indian Wars.
A remarkable group of soldiers.
Or the Navajo Code Talkers in World War II, whose unbreakable code based on the Navajo language proved invaluable to the Allied victory.
Their contributions were crucial.
Their stories are both inspiring and heartbreaking, reminding us of the complexities of patriotism and belonging.
It's a complex legacy.
And it's not just about battles, it's about the cultural contributions, the storytelling, the music, the art that emerged from these communities.
Yeah, the creative expressions of their experiences.
Speaking of art and storytelling, that's something that really resonated with me. The book highlights how both indigenous and African American cultures have these incredibly rich oral traditions.
Oh yeah, the power of storytelling.
Using stories and songs to keep their histories alive, to pass down knowledge, and to resist erasure.
It's a way of keeping their culture alive.
Storytelling is such a powerful tool, isn't it?
It is. It's a way to make sense of the world, to connect with others, and to keep cultural memory alive.
And for marginalized communities, it's often a way to reclaim their narratives and challenge dominant historical accounts.
Absolutely. It's about taking back their stories.
Exactly. You think about the impact of authors like Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Jacob Lawrence, Buffy Sankari.
All incredible storytellers.
Their work has shaped our understanding of America.
They've given voice to the voiceless.
They've challenged injustice and preserved cultural memory through their art.
Their legacy is immense.
And what's amazing is that those traditions continue to evolve today. Blues, jazz, hip-hop. All of these musical genres are rooted in the experiences of these communities, blending influences, innovating, and continuing to shape the soundscape of America.
It's a vibrant and ever-evolving cultural landscape.
It's a testament to the enduring power of creativity, the way these communities have used art and music as a form of resistance expression and cultural preservation.
And it's a reminder that their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs are still unfolding, shaping the America we live in today.
Which brings us to the present day. This story isn't just about the past, it's about the ongoing fight for justice and equality that continues to this day.
It's an ongoing struggle.
We're seeing it in the Black Lives Matter movement, in indigenous rights movements, in the fight for land, for reparations, for cultural preservation.
These movements are carrying the torch forward.
It's a reminder that the struggle for justice is an ongoing process, a relay race, where each generation picks up the torch and carries it forward.
And we all have a part to play in that relay race.
And what's exciting is that we're seeing more and more collaboration between these movements, recognizing that their struggles are interconnected and that they're stronger together.
There's power in unity.
Absolutely. I'm so glad we're digging into all of this because it feels like we're just scratching the surface of this incredible history.
Oh yeah, there's so much more to explore.
and I'm eager to keep exploring, but we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have?
So let's take a moment to process that we've learned before we dive even deeper.
Yeah, let's take a breather.
We'll be right back.
Sounds good. As we were talking about the fight for civil rights, one of the things that really struck me is how that struggle has taken on these new forms in the 21st century.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's not just about protests and marches anymore. It's about reclaiming those narratives, celebrating cultural identity, and building economic power.
It's like a whole new level.
It is.
And technology has become such a powerful tool in that fight, did you think?
Absolutely. Social media has given these movements a global platform, allowing them to connect and organize and share their stories with a much wider audience.
It's incredible how quickly things can spread now.
It's amazing. And it's not just about broadcasting a message, it's about building coalitions and fostering the dialogue on a global scale.
Right, it's about connecting with people.
Exactly. We're seeing more and more collaboration between Black Lives Matter activists and Indigenous rights groups, recognizing those shared struggles against systemic oppression.
It's like they're realizing they're stronger together.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is how these movements are kind of weaving together all these different threads of justice, like racial justice, environmental justice, economic justice.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It is. You can't really address one without tackling the others.
It's that idea of intersectionality that the book talks about.
Right.
Recognizing how different forms of oppression kind of overlap and impact people in these unique ways.
Yeah, it's a complex web.
And it made me think about how this book doesn't just celebrate the victories in this shared history.
No, it doesn't.
It also acknowledges the complexities and the contradictions.
It's an honest look at the past warts and all.
Right, like we talked about earlier, some native tribes participated in slavery even while others were helping runaway slaves escape.
Right.
It's a reminder that history is rarely a simple story of good guys and bad guys.
Yeah, it's messy, it's nuanced.
And understanding those complexities is crucial for moving forward.
Absolutely, we can't just ignore the difficult parts.
Which brings us to the importance of education.
Yeah.
This book makes such a compelling argument for promoting accurate and inclusive history, not just in schools, but in our broader cultural understanding.
We need to decolonize the narratives we've inherited.
What do you mean by that?
We need to recognize the contributions and perspectives of those whose stories have been marginalized or erased.
Right, like Indigenous and African American perspective.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and it's about empowering future generations to learn from the past so they can create a more just future.
It's about giving them the tools to build a better world.
Absolutely.
I love how the book doesn't just dwell on the past.
No, it doesn't.
It looks ahead with a sense of hope and possibility.
It's hopeful.
It talks about the potential for healing, for reconciliation, for building stronger alliances between Indigenous and African American communities.
It's about moving forward together.
And it offers concrete steps we can all take to contribute to that future.
Like what?
Learning about each other's histories and cultures, supporting Black and Indigenous-owned businesses, advocating for policies that promote justice and equality.
Those are all great steps.
These are all actions we can take to make a difference.
We can all be part of the solution.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
Right.
This story isn't over, it's still being written, and we all have a hand in how it unfolds.
We're all part of this story.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about cultural preservation. That was another theme that really jumped out at me in the book.
Yeah, it's a crucial part of conversation.
It's not just about fighting for rights. It's about protecting the languages, the traditions, the artistic expressions that have been passed down through generations.
It's about keeping those cultures alive.
And it's not just about preserving these traditions in a museum.
No, it's not.
It's about breathing new life into them, reinterpreting them for contemporary audiences.
It's about keeping those traditions relevant and vibrant.
Exactly. We see this happening in the music, the art, and the literature emerging from these communities today.
It's exciting to see how those traditions are being reimagined.
It's vibrant, it's innovative, and it's challenging us to rethink what it means to be American.
It's pushing the boundaries of American culture.
But throughout this conversation, I keep coming back to the spiritual connection between these communities.
Yeah.
It's a thread that seems to run through so much of their shared history.
It's a powerful connection.
The spiritual connections are profound and have played such a significant role in their intertwined narratives.
They're at the heart of their shared story.
Both Indigenous and African spiritual traditions share this deep reverence for ancestors, a connection to nature, and a belief in a spiritual world that's interwoven with the physical.
It's a holistic worldview.
And it's not just about abstract beliefs.
No, it's not.
It's about the ways these communities have used ritual ceremonies and healing traditions to survive, to resist, and to find meaning in the face of adversity.
It's about using spirituality as a source of strength.
Like the book mentions, practices like hoodoo and root work blending African traditions with native healing practices are a testament to their ingenuity and resilience.
Yeah, it's amazing how they combine those traditions.
It's fascinating how they've used herbs and rituals for protection and healing, creating this almost secret language of spiritual resistance.
Yeah, a hidden wisdom.
And let's not forget those sacred ceremonies often practiced in secret and passed down through generations,
Those ceremonies were a vital part of their cultural heritage.
becoming a source of strength and a way to keep their cultures alive despite attempts to suppress them.
It's a testament to their determination to preserve their traditions.
It's inspiring how those traditions have not only survived but continue to evolve and thrive today, finding new expression in music, art, and activism,
It's a beautiful example of cultural resilience.
offering sense of grounding and purpose in a world that's constantly changing.
Yeah, it's about finding stability in the midst of chaos.
It's a reminder that spirituality isn't separate from the struggle for justice and equality. It's deeply intertwined with it.
It's about using spirituality to fuel the fight for a better world.
As we wrap up this deep dive into warriors and ancestors, one thing that keeps sticking with me is how the book tackles these really complex ideas, but doesn't shy away from the nuance.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It would have been easy to just present a simple narrative of unity and shared struggle.
Right, just kind of a feel-good story.
Yeah, but it digs deeper, acknowledging the tensions and conflicts that have existed between Indigenous and African American communities at times.
It's refreshing, right? It acknowledges that there have been times when these communities haven't always seen eye to eye.
Yeah, for sure.
But instead of glossing over those differences, it emphasizes the importance of dialogue and understanding
Right.
and working through those challenges to find common ground.
And I think that's so important because ultimately we have so much more in common than what divides us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We're all fighting against these systems of oppression, whether it's racism or colonialism or economic exploitation.
We're all in this together.
And we all share this dream of a future where our children can inherit a world that's more just equitable and humane.
It's a beautiful vision.
It is. And I think that shared vision is what makes this whole concept of warriors and ancestors so powerful.
It does.
It's about tapping into that strength and resilience of those who came before us, who fought for a better world, and carrying their legacy forward.
Yeah, we're standing on their shoulders.
And not just with words, but with actions.
Actions spoke louder than words.
Right. It's like this book is calling us to be warriors for justice in our own time,
Yeah.
drawing inspiration from the ancestors who paved the way.
Yeah, they're showing us the path.
And it's a really powerful reminder that this fight for a better world, it's never truly over.
No, it's a constant struggle.
It's an ongoing journey, a relay race, where each generation passes the torch to the next.
And we have to keep running with that torch.
Now, as we get to the heart of the book's message,
Okay.
we can't ignore the importance of honoring those ancestors and learning from the past as we try to build this better future.
Yeah, that's key.
The authors make a compelling case for why understanding history, and particularly the shared history of Indigenous and African American communities, is so crucial to our present and our future.
History isn't just about the past.
Right? It's not just about dates and events. It's like a living, breathing force that shapes our present and influences our future.
It shapes who we are today.
Understanding that legacy of colonialism, of slavery, of segregation, and systemic racism, that's essential if we're going to break free from those cycles of oppression.
We have to learn from our mistakes.
Right? And it's not just about acknowledging the wrongs of the past.
No, it's not.
It's about learning from them so that we don't repeat them.
Exactly. We can't let history repeat itself.
This book is full of stories of resistance, of resilience, of courage, and of hope.
Those stories are so inspiring.
And they offer valuable lessons about the power of unity, the importance of perseverance, and that indomitable human spirit.
They show us what's possible.
Those stories remind us that even when facing unimaginable adversity, people found ways to resist, to create, to love, and to hope.
The human spirit is amazing.
It is. They inspire us to draw strength from the past, to face the challenges of the present, and to work toward a future where those injustices aren't repeated.
We have to keep fighting for a better world.
We do. And that brings us to the book's conclusion, where the authors kind of eloquently summarize the key takeaways from this journey through history.
Yeah.
And offer a powerful call to action for all of us.
It's a powerful ending.
It is. It's a powerful ending to a powerful book. And it really drives home this point that the story doesn't end when we close the book.
No, it doesn't.
It continues to unfold in our lives, our communities, and our world.
It's an ongoing story.
The authors urge us to remember that interconnectedness of Indigenous and African American history.
Yeah, that shared journey.
The shared struggles, the cultural fusion, those spiritual connections, and that ongoing fight for justice and equality.
We can't forget where we came from.
And they challenge us to see ourselves as part of that story,
Right.
to recognize our own roles in either perpetuating or dismantling systems of oppression, and to actively engage in the work of creating a more just and equitable world.
We all have a responsibility.
Now, as we bring our deep dive to a close,
Okay.
I want to leave you with one final thought that really resonated with me.
What's that?
This book emphasizes that this isn't just about understanding the past.
Right.
It's about shaping the future.
The future is in our hands.
It's about using the knowledge we've gained, the stories we've heard, and the connections we've made to build a better world for ourselves and for generations to come.
We have the power to create change.
It's about honoring the legacy of those who came before us, those who fought for justice and equality, and those who paved the way for a brighter future.
We're carrying on their work.
So as you move forward from this conversation, I want to encourage you to ask yourself,
Okay.
what can I do to contribute to building a more just and equitable world?
That's a great question.
What actions can I take to honor the legacy of those who came before me? And how can I use my voice and my actions to create a future where all communities have the opportunity to thrive?
Those are questions we should all be asking ourselves.
I agree. It's been an incredible journey exploring this interconnected history with you.
It has been fascinating.
We've uncovered hidden truths, challenged assumptions, and hopefully sparked a desire to keep learning and engaging with this rich and complex story.
There's always more to learn.
Remember, this conversation doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep fighting for a better world.
The fight continues.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep digging.